What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then just welcome to my channel. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button because you won't be disappointed. I'm here with my son in my arms today. You know what? Being a single parent and working is just a difficult task. Sometimes the mother has to multitask. Okay, I feel very, very Kylie Jenner when she had little Stormy in the office. I feel you with blue in my arms. This video, as you can tell by the description, is going to be a story about Nathaniel Bar Jonah, who is accused of murdering neighborhood children and feeding them to himself and his neighbors at barbecues. He's very sick, and this look is very sickening. So if you are interested in either one, just, keep on watching. So today's story, guys and gals, is a very, it's a very triggering one. If you are triggered by crime stories involving children, then you might just want to click off this video. Like, literally, I know it's very triggering for me. I literally, while taking notes, cried, but then again, it's Shark Week for me, so I'm a little bit more sensitive right now, but whatever. Today's story is about a man named Nathaniel Bar Jonah. Literally, Blue has been knocked out, and now he wants to make noise. Well, Nathaniel Bar Jonah was actually born David Paul Brown in Worcester, Massachusetts in 1957. Very little is known about his family beyond the fact that he was raised in a house with both parents and he has a brother. It is noted that there were very early signs that he was not a normal child by a long stretch of the imagination. He was a very weird kid, to say the least. Beginning at the age of 6, he would pick his scabs, eat them, and then pick the wound until it bled and suck the blood from his body. His teachers would often call his mom to complain, letting her know how upsetting it was for them and the other children, but nothing ever came of the incident because he kept on doing it because he was nasty. For his 7th birthday, he received a Ouija board as a gift. I don't know why someone would give a 7-year-old a Ouija board. I don't think at 7 I was even allowed to watch the adults in my family play with the Ouija board. Come on, kid. Weird. Anywho, he convinces a 6-year-old kid in the neighborhood that the board would allow him to see the future. And so he lures the little boy into the basement of his parents' home to show him how it works, show him the future. We all know it doesn't take much to convince a 6-year-old of anything. So, of course, the little baby went. Actually, it was a 5-year-old little girl. She wasn't 6. She was 5. She went into the basement with him. Once he got her down there, he began to strangle her. And luckily, she was still able to scream loud enough to attract the attention of his mother, who then comes into the basement, forces him to let her go. And nothing ever came of the incident because his mother just did not want to believe that her son was a psychotic little, and so she refused to just believe that he actually knew what he was doing and intended to hurt the girl. I don't know why the girl's parents didn't take action. I don't know if she didn't tell her parents or what, because I find it hard to believe that her parents as well would be so quick to just brush it under the rug. Because if you strangle my child, ain't nobody strangling my child and I just get over it. No. This brush is the Phase 2 by Marc Jacobs. And I bought it so long ago when it first came out. And I promise you, in the 2+2, maybe 3 years that I've had it, I don't think it has shed one single fight. A few years later, Nathaniel decides to try this thing again. At 12, he gets a 6-year-old from the neighborhood and convinces him that he wanted to take him sledding from the top of this tall hill in the neighborhood. And of course the baby goes because it sounds like so much fun. But once he gets him there, he rapes the child and threatens that if he tells anyone that worse things would happen. So of course the boy is too afraid to tell anybody about the incident, and he feels like he's gotten away with it, which catapults his confidence that, he can do these type of things and not be punished for them. Oh shoot, Blue about to turn up. He is about to, I can see it in his eyes. He's moving closer and closer to me down on the floor. Chill out, Girl Scout. Creeping up on me like my mustache. I ain't having it. So a couple years go by after the incident with the 6-year-old, and Nathaniel targets 2 boys in the neighborhood. He's now about 16, 17, targets 2 boys in the neighborhood riding their bikes and convinces them, hey, we should all go and meet up at this cemetery. He intended to murder the 2 kids, but one of them grew kind of suspicious and was like, yeah, let's just not. So he convinces his friend that it's not a good idea to follow Nathaniel to the cemetery, and so they don't go, thank God. When Nathaniel turns 19, he approaches 8-year-old Richard O'Connor on his way to school. Now, Nathaniel is dressed as a police officer, and 8-year-old Richard believes him because he's 8. Nathaniel lures the 8-year-old into his car where he sexually assaults and strangles him. Now, luckily for the boy, a neighbor witnesses the abduction and calls the police. Reports seeing the boy being lured into a vehicle, gives a description of the car, and the police are able to conduct a successful search. Once they approach the vehicle, they demand that Nathaniel gets out, and they find 8-year-old O'Connor bloodied inside the car. He had defecated and urinated on himself from the sexual assault. He was also near the point of death from the strangulation. Terrible. Like, how sick do you have to be to hurt a child? Like 6-year-olds and 8-year-olds? Like, come on now. You literally just deserve to burn in hell for all of eternity. As sick as this assault was, Nathaniel was only sentenced to probation, 1 year of probation. And I think it might have had something to do with his age because he was in high school still when this happened. But still, high school or not, he should have definitely taken his nasty behind to jail. To jail. Later on that same year as a senior high school, near graduation, he drives to Hartford, Connecticut, once again impersonating a police officer, picks up a 9-year-old girl, rapes her inside the vehicle, and once she begins like convulsing and vomiting, he throws her out of the car onto the sidewalk and pulls off. Apparently he doesn't care much about doing his crimes in broad daylight because, again, a witness witnesses him tossing the girl out of the vehicle, writes down his license plate, gets his description, and then he is arrested. But somehow this arrest does not make it back to his probation officer, so he is released from probation in May the next year, 1976, for his crime against 8-year-old Richard O'Connor. When his probationary period was over, he received a letter thanking him for his cooperation. A year and 4 months after he is released from probation, Nasty Nate is now posing as an FBI agent because I guess apparently he gave himself a little promotion. He approaches 2 young boys coming from a movie theater, convinces them that they are arrested, that he is an undercover FBI agent, and he gets them into his vehicle. He then transports the boys to a secluded area where they're handcuffed, of course, because he pretended that they were under arrest. And there, he didn't sexually assault them. He just held them there, torturing them. He was like burning them with cigarettes, beating them. One of the boys, he began to jump on his chest. And at this time, Nathaniel weighs 375 pounds. So he's jumping on this kid's chest and the child goes unconscious. Nathaniel believes that the boy is dead. So in a panic, he throws the living child into his trunk and takes off and abandons the boy that he's presumed deceased. But the boy was not dead. He eventually came to and was able to seek help, which led to Nasty Nate being arrested. Thank God the kid in his trunk was still there and still alive. For this crime, he was convicted of attempted murder, so he received the maximum sentence, which was 18 to 20 years. So during this sentence, he begins meeting with a psychiatrist where he was discussing his fantasies of murdering, dissecting, and devouring children. The psychiatrist recommends that he be moved to a mental facility. So he's then transferred to the Bridgewater State Hospital to serve out the rest of his time. There he changed his name from his birth name to Nathaniel Bar Jonah because it's Jewish, and he said that he is Jewish and he needed a name that reflected that, so they approved his name change And in 91, after 19 years in jail with just one more to go, Superior Court Judge Walter E. Steele ruled that Massachusetts had failed to prove that Nasty Nate was still a threat at his parole hearing, and so he was then released. He was released on probation under the stipulation that he would join his mother in Great Falls, Montana, which is a nice, quiet little town. And that is what he did. He moves to Great Falls with his mother and his brother. You know, his father is never mentioned. I don't know whatever happened to his dad. I don't know if they divorced. I don't know if daddy died. No clue. But daddy wasn't there. Daddy wasn't there. It seems it doesn't care. Alright, I should have left some baking powder under my eye because I'm about to get into this color. I'm going to use the James Charles palette today, and I don't have a certain look in mind, so hopefully, you know, things just go well, because if not, you're about to witness a train wreck. And I'm just gonna keep going till the story is over, because so just a few days after he is released, he is in the parking lot of a store and he sees a 7-year-old boy sitting in a parked car. He approaches the vehicle, forces his way inside, and sits on the child. Sits his overgrown behind on this 7-year-old child. And yet again, he does not take into consideration that there are people around that can see your big ass. The boy's mother, along with a few other people who were in the parking lot, immediately runs to aid the child, and Nasty Nate flees the scene. But of course, they apprehend him. He claims that he got into the vehicle to escape the rain and did not see the child sitting there and the child that he sat on. Then he eventually came clean and was like, yeah, I was trying to kill the kid. I was. For this attack, he is once again only sentenced to probation because law enforcement is stupid a lot of times. Stupid. And of course, this just makes him feel like he's just unstoppable, untouchable. He got it going on and can do what he wants. I think it's also worth noting or mentioning that at this time, while he's being held by the Montana State Prison, guards noticed and complained about him pinching off his scabs, eating them, and sucking the blood from his wounds, much like he did when he was a nasty little kid back in the day. One of the guards said that he appeared to be having an orgasm once he had the scab in his mouth. Like, sir, why? So he's back out on probation, living it up with his mom and his brother, plotting on his next move. On February 6, 1996, 10-year-old Zachary Ramsey leaves his apartment at precisely 7:34 a.m., walking to school on his typical everyday route, which takes him through an alleyway in the neighborhood, like between apartment buildings, and then comes out on a main street. But he never makes it to school. He disappears during the route. Now, there are several witnesses that came forward with stories of what happened to Zachary once he hit the alleyway. There's a family of 3 that reported seeing Zachary that morning in the alleyway and seeing an off-white car nearly run him over. A 4th witness came forward and said that they remember seeing Zachary just standing in the alleyway, appearing as if he was waiting on someone. A 5th witness reported seeing Zachary in that alleyway looking distressed or appearing to be distressed and being followed by an obese male who was just a couple feet behind him. Sound familiar? And that was about 7:45. And then there's a 6th witness who claims to have seen Nathaniel taking out his trash at 7:15 a.m. and then seeing Zachary wearing a navy blue police-like jacket. This same witness reported seeing Zachary hit the alleyway a little while after that and said that Nathaniel was still lingering in the alleyway, standing next to the dumpster. Somewhere between the entrance of the alleyway and the exit that Zachary would have taken to continue his route to school, Zachary disappears and is never seen or heard from again. And despite objections from his mother, claimed that she did not feel her son was dead, that he would be found. A judge declared him legally dead in 2011, which is 15 years after the day he disappeared. So on the morning of October 13th, 1997, a year after Zachary goes missing, Amanda Gillian, 14 at the time, leaves home at 7:15 a.m. on her bicycle route to school and disappears along the way, much like Zachary. Now this took place in Gillette, Wyoming, which is like 500 miles, roughly about between 450 to 500 miles from Great Falls, Montana, where Nasty Nate resides. But for whatever reason, Nathaniel took a trip to Gillette the night before Amanda goes missing. He stayed at a small motel on the outskirts of town, and he was back in his town the next night. Her bicycle was discovered along the highway, and she literally just disappeared without a trace. Her social security number is never used again. Like, she just vanishes. Now, amid the disappearances of both of these children, Nasty Nate was living in an apartment complex right near Zachary and where he went missing. And in his apartment, he had been secretly luring boys from the neighborhood in his apartment, assaulting them, threatening them not to tell anyone. He'd even installed like a pulley from the ceiling where he would hang them by their neck. I mean, just crazy shit. Crazy shit. These crimes go undiscovered for years. Like, he is getting away with this, threatening these children, and nobody knows that it's going on. Like, terrible. By this time, he had successfully blended into the neighborhood and passed himself off as a regular, normal, friendly fixture of the community. He would host these cookouts for the neighborhood where he provided and prepared all of the meals, all of the beverages. Like, he just was, a friendly big guy in the neighborhood. Among these dishes were burgers, spaghetti, casseroles, like meat pies, chili. And one thing that all of the neighbors did notice is that the food that Nathaniel made for them was full of strange meats that they could not identify. When they asked him about the meat, he claimed that it had come from a deer that he had shot, though no one knew Nasty Nate to ever go hunting. As a matter of fact, he didn't have a hunting license, he didn't own a rifle, and he damn sure didn't have the space in that apartment to butcher deer as he claimed that he did. Like, literally no one ever saw him dressed up in hunting gear, dragging in a big old dead ass deer, like none of the things that go along with hunting. Fast forward to 3 years after Zachary goes missing. In 1999, Nasty Nate is arrested yet again for impersonating a police officer at an elementary school. Now, at first, the charge was just impersonating a police officer. But once the police began their investigation and searched Nathaniel's home, they made some very shocking and disturbing discoveries. They found a shard of human bone. They confiscated a meat grinder. A bizarre diary written in code was also found, and with the help of the FBI, they were able to get it decoded. Now, in the journal, Nate had described torturing and eating children. There were recipes written out that called for children's body parts. His diary described his plan to make barbecued kid, a My Little Kid dessert, little boy stew, little boy pot pies, and an entry titled Lunch on the Patio with Roasted Child. Like, how sick. He also described his obsession with torturing and murdering children. Of course, the diary and the meat grinder definitely raised a lot of dark suspicions. I mean, as they should, because duh. Thinking back to all of the strange meals and unidentified meats that he was serving the neighbors, it didn't take much for them to realize there was a great possibility that he had murdered Zachary and fed them his flesh. Hair was found inside the meat grinder that was taken from Zachary's Nathaniel's apartment. And after DNA testing, they found that it did not belong to Zachary. However, it did belong to a male child, and it did not match the DNA of the human bone shard that they found, and then that didn't match Zachary's DNA either, so there's 3 kids there. They also found a list of 22 names, all boy names. So 8 of them were previous victims of Nathaniel. Most of the other names were of the neighborhood children that he was currently living in, and others were never identified, but on the list was Zachary Ramsey, the 10-year-old that went missing, with died written outside of his name. A former roommate of Nate's came forward and described clothes that he had found in the apartment that matched the clothes that Zachary was reported wearing on the day that he went missing. A football jacket with his last name on the back, like hardly mistakable. Another roommate came forward and said that he had found the bloody gloves in the apartment. Friends of Nathaniel's who visited him, as well as his roommates, would say that he would often bring up Zachary's name like in random conversations that had nothing to do with the child, the case, or his disappearance. And they all thought that that was very odd. I guess they didn't think that, he had anything to do with it. They just thought shit was weird. When the detectives sprayed the garage with the phosphorus chemical that shows traces of blood and stuff, the word Tita appeared smeared across the wall of the garage, which investigators are now led to believe that he's responsible for the abduction of James Tita, who was a Massachusetts boy who had been kidnapped back in '73. Tita's body was discovered 2 days later in New Hampshire, thrown along the side of a highway, and an autopsy revealed that he had been raped and strangled, which we all know is Nasty Nate's go-to move. So during the trial, a lot of the neighbors began to come forward with allegations that, Nathaniel had molested their children, and Nathaniel was quickly charged with kidnapping and molestation. Now, because there wasn't enough physical evidence to prove that Nathaniel had killed Zachary, paired with the fact that his mother claimed that she did not believe he had done it because she still believed that her child was alive and still would be found, the charges pertaining to Zachary Ramsey were dropped. Amanda, that went missing the year after Zachary did, her boyfriend went missing a couple days after that. So that led authorities to speculate or believe that he had something to do with it, or maybe they had run away together. And so Nathaniel was not charged or pursued in her case, but her social security number, like I said before, was never used again. So if they ran away together, eventually, she would pop up somewhere. Neither her nor her boyfriend, ever popped up. During Nathaniel's trial, 36-year-old Mayor Patron recognizes him as the man who abducted her and raped her at 9 by dressing up as a police officer in 1974. Remember the girl who he threw on the side of the road? But the statute of limitations had passed on that crime, so he was not able to be charged, and she was not able to get justice for what he had done to her. He did not go free this time. He was sentenced to 130 years for the molestation charges, and people were still just kind of not happy because they thought that eventually he would just be back out on the streets again, because he had eventually ended up back out on the streets every other time he was arrested. So they were very much prepared to harm him had he been released and come back to their neighborhood. They were very vocal about the fact that if he was released, he would just be turning up dead very shortly thereafter. No one ever got the chance to give homeboy any kind of street justice or much justice at all, because in 2008, less than 10 years into his 130-year sentence, he was found dead in his cell from an apparent heart attack. And this was because he was just so morbidly obese, which I read somewhere that a lot of the neighbors noted that they never saw him out grocery shopping, but he stayed fat. Sir, homeboy was eating the children. To this day, no one knows exactly the number of children or people that he killed. They don't know the number of victims. Let's just say victims. They don't know. He never admitted to killing Zachary or really anybody. He just was like, I don't know. I really like hitting my Cupid's bow with highlighter. Put my little mole back. Ooh, my little beauty marks. I used to take like a little piece of a makeup remover and then just dot it back, but I'm tired of using my damn makeup removers. So I'm just gonna use a little piece of eyeliner and do what needs to be done. And a look is not a look without a pop of color or highlight or something cute on the inner corner. So I'm going to take this orange. Girl, that didn't do nothing. Let's try this little extra bright color here. Okay. Okay, she kind of doing it. She kind of doing something here. Satisfied. So that is it for this story and this look. I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed both. Blue, you were so good. You've been so good. Usually you're very ratchet. He's such a big baby. Typically he's so ratchet in the background. Anyway, that is it for this look and this story. If you like it, if you enjoyed either one or both, give the video a thumbs up, share, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.